thank you all very much for letting us squeeze in. I'm Ty Lawson. I'm a local lawyer. Do a fair amount of land development. I'm a Frederick County property owner and a taxpayer. And part of the purpose of this is to hopefully answer some questions about the PPEA, the Frederick County office building. But I need to also, and I'd be remiss not to mention the fact that it's part of a rezoning. It's part of the Russell 150 property, which is in between I-81 and 522. Frankly, not far from here. Airport Road comes into it right there, rather prominently. With us tonight, I wanted to let you all know we have Matt Millstead and Bruce Griffin, who are developers that are interested in going forward with the rezoning, and of course John Goode, who is with Shockey. And all of these folks have come together along with a group called MMA, which is the property owner, to propose not only the rezoning, not only the roads and bridge across the property, but also the PPEA. And we kind of come a long way, and it's been quite a journey. It's almost a year ago we submitted the PPEA, and it was for the Frederick County office building on 10 acres within the Russell 150 acres. And it's a proposal to give free land, and some people may have some questions about that, but it's free land, it's unencumbered, and it was for the purpose of building an office building. And then the office building, if the county wants to do it, it's their call, it's their decision, could be built on this property. And Shockey, of course, came up with the numbers for what it would cost and how it would be done. And when we did it, there was some whiff about consolidation, maybe putting the school board in the proposal. But that certainly wasn't set in stone, and it was more talked about. Along the way, we also mentioned, in order to do this, we're going to need to rezone the property. And by that, I don't mean build the office building, build anything on this property. This property was zoned many years ago. It had a special tax district put on it, and it is most decidedly, as we sit here today, dead. It is overly burdened with debt. It can't go forward. It needs to be restructured. The road network that you see in the original proposal is completely outdated. VDOT won't accept it. You see a new alignment here. That is what's been approved by VDOT and can be allowed to be built. But we've been working on that, and we filed and have prepared a rezoning for Frederick County to consider. And still in the rezoning itself is an honor to a commitment that we made a year ago, which is the 10 acres, the PPEA. And I'd love to talk about the rezoning and the details of it, and as I told Jody, we'll stick around at the conclusion if anyone wants to ask about the particulars, ask about the bridge over 81, the road networks, and what's planned, and so on. It's all private sector money, all private development. But the big question has been along the way, and some of you have spoken at the Board of Supervisors, why a PPEA? Why are we doing this? Why are we taking or considering taking on the expense of building a new office building? And generally speaking, the thought is that if you believe this county's growing, and we certainly have seen that between the last two censuses, and we've experienced that, and I would say I hope we do believe that it will continue to grow, because if it goes the other way, we're shrinking and we're dying, that there may well be a need for a county office building to accommodate the needs of the citizens. And shouldn't that office building be in the county as opposed to the city? So we started with that. We put this proposal together. But what I wanted to do is turn it over to John Goode and talk more about the particulars of why a county office building, why here, why now, at this point in time. And then when he concludes, be happy to answer questions. And again, we'll be pleased to talk with you all about the rezoning and the rest of the project if anyone has questions.
I want to say that I have something in common with some of the groups similar to yours. Is I made a campaign contribution to Mitt Romney late in the campaign in 2012. Of course, he didn't make it. And I got my first notice from the IRS that December of the tax audit, and completed the field work in early January. Didn't hear anything from the IRS about the resolution of that. So I got a big fat letter in the mail in July 2013. I thought that was the resolution of the tax audit. I opened it up and looked at it. It was a second audit. It was the next tax year. So I feel a little kinship there with the federal government and the IRS, with some of the groups similar to yours. And sometimes you don't want the government to be efficient, but when it comes to tax audits, they seem to find some efficiency. So far, no adjustments on either of those audits. I want to cover a few things. I'm a taxpayer in Frederick County too, and of course I wear a hat for 35 years working for a construction company. That's how I make a living. But I'm also a taxpayer. So from that vantage point, why would we want to do a project like this? Well, there's a certain advantage that has come up in the process about the possibility of jointly locating the school board offices and the county administration offices in the same facility. I think there's a lot of potential there for cost savings because each of the entities, and we own both of them, the administrative piece, the school board piece, has various departments that are duplicated. The IT computer departments, there are two of them. Purchasing departments, two of them. Human resource departments, two of them. There's an awful lot of basic structure there where we're paying for two fully staffed, fully equipped departments. And consolidated, there probably is a great opportunity there for savings and efficiency over the long haul. The project would take approximately 2 years to finish designing based on the needs of the customer. We don't determine what that is. It depends on what's needed and what's approved. And that 2-year period would be a great period for the county to begin the conversation about consolidating as many activities as possible to save money over the long haul and enhance the level of service. We're very lucky, I think, in Frederick County to have good service and pretty good value for the dollar. That doesn't mean it can't be better. I think we have a great board of supervisors who pays a lot of attention to the needs of business in the community, pays a lot of taxes, also residents. And recently they've had a business-friendly committee study to ask for feedback. Not many localities do that, and but Frederick County's leadership did. I think that's a very positive thing, so I think they do pay attention. And so that's what I think, that putting the two entities together, county administration and the school board administration, is just a tremendous opportunity to eliminate a lot of redundancy. And it's not just people. There's redundancy in equipment, space utilization, and so forth. So, assuming that you reach a point where you say, yes, we probably ought to think about doing one of these buildings, why is now better than later? And that's one of the main things I want to hit here. That is, there are 3 reasons why taking some action now rather than saying, let's kick that can down the road. Actually, 4 reasons. I've already mentioned the first one. It's an opportunity to do some consolidation and reduce cost. And it's hard to do that when the 2 divisions are in separate facilities and divorced from each other. It's much easier to do that. In fact, it makes it pretty easy to point out, why do I have an IT department on the 2nd floor and an IT department on the 3rd floor? Shouldn't we just have one and consolidate? And I think it makes it pretty hard to ignore. But the second reason is a free site. Most of the time, As consumers, when we hear about something for free, we're a bit skeptical. Often when somebody wants to give you a piece of land, you really need to be skeptical because you'll probably wish before it's over that you didn't take it. Because it's a swamp, it's 2 miles past the last paved road, there are no utilities close to it or whatever. There's a lot of bad stuff. And it could cost you more to develop the site than it's worth, and you wish you would have bought a good site to start with. In this case, the free site happens to be an excellent site. It's pictured up here, and you'll probably hear more about this later. Right here at the intersection of Airport Road and 522. This is not an isolated site. It's not a distant site. It's in a prime location in terms of being a pretty central point for where a lot of the population of Frederick County can access it. And it's got excellent access and not far from an interstate interchange. So it's a tremendous location. The site development costs expected from this site are probably on the lower end of what you could expect for a couple of reasons. One, it's not limestone. A lot of sites in our area, particularly the center of the county, are limestone, and you have to do a lot of blasting and so forth to deal with it. Site costs are very high. Some sites are topography, it's steep. You have to deal with that. The topography is good on this site. It's shale, and the cost of developing the project there will be very reasonable compared to many other possible sites. Also, the utilities and roads, they're right there. We don't have to build something for a long distance or put a lot of pipe in the ground to get there in order to serve the site. So the free site is a good deal. Second thing I want to talk about is something I've worked with for 35 years. That's construction costs. A piece of bad news. We've already missed, in terms of this economic situation we've had since 2008, we've already missed the lowest point for construction costs. I think we're on the way back up, not in construction profits, but in what it costs you to do a project. And that's for several reasons. One, materials costs as a basket have been actually pretty stable since 2008. Individual materials have had spikes up and down. A lot of our commodities are impacted in some cases by demand worldwide. For example, steel would be that way. But it's basically been, on balance, pretty stable. Recently, in doing some budgeting, we look at materials costs ahead for 2014. We heard the typical, the increases are going to be posted in the spring. Some of them are in effect already. And, they're 5%, 6%, 4%, or whatever. But what we've seen for the last 4 or 5 years is the increases that are posted don't stick. You end up essentially buying the materials later that season at the old price. This year, I've been told it's going to be different. If they're asking for a 5 or 6% increase, they'll acknowledge they might not get it all, but it's not going to be too bad. They finally got to the point where they're not going to absorb. Their health care costs are going up and other costs, and they're not going to absorb anymore. If they're going to be resigned to a continuing period of time at modest levels of volume, not the boom years, they're going to have to find a way to cover their overhead and make some money. So we've seen the bottom there, I think, and it's most likely up from here on materials. Subcontractors and they do 80% of our work. They're the guys that specialize in electrical, plumbing, heating, windows, steel work, or whatever. There's been a lot of damage done since 2008 to that industry. The smart guys early on, anywhere close to retirement, sold their businesses and got out while they could get some money out to retire on. I don't know how many auction ads I saw over the last 4 or 5 years with businesses of 40, 50, sometimes 80 years vintage, been in business that long, 2 or 3 generations, finally we're hanging it up. So a lot of capacity has left the industry, and virtually all the trades. The worst part of it's yet to come. we have the walking wounded that are still there. They might give you a good price for their particular trade, but when you investigate their capability to actually finish the job, they're not financially capable of doing that, and you don't want them to die on your job. So when we look at people, sometimes we find that they owe hundreds of thousands of dollars for work that they finished 2 years ago, and they're just not capable of continuing on. So the capacity is already reduced, and it's going to be reduced further. And some of the folks in the business, you can't deal with them because they just aren't going to finish a major job. So as a result of that, while we really haven't seen a huge spike up in pricing yet there, it won't take much before we will be seeing some significant increases there, simply because the capacity is no longer there. If the market comes back to any extent, the pricing will start firming pretty quickly. So the low point has been missed, and if you're going to do a project like this anytime soon, time is of the essence. The final thing is interest rates. I think most of you know we have recently been through a period of time of historically low interest rates, and we've also hit the bottom probably a year or so ago there, so we're not able to put a deal together at the bottom, but we're not far from the bottom. I did a little study of what difference it would make if interest rates went up by 2 percentage points. What difference does that make to a project like this that you might finance with bonds, or like you would maybe a home mortgage comparable to that, over a 30-year period of time? And I have a couple numbers to give you. If the amount of money that you're financing, and I just picked these numbers as examples, was $30 million, a 2% change in interest rates there could, over a 30-year period, means your debt service, your total payments, would be around $23.2 million more. If the amount borrowed was $40 million, the additional debt service of just that 2-point change would be about $31 million more. In other words, over $1 million a year of extra debt service just because interest rates went up. And final example, of the $50 million borrowing, it would cost you $38.7 million more just because interest rates went up by a couple of points. So where do we stand today on interest rates compared to history? I found that a pretty interesting thing.